So, to make a start, I'm going to do some introductions. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Amanda Tuke. I'm a nature writer, botanist and birder, and until the end of March I am the nature writer in residence in the Great North Wood, in partnership with the London Wildlife Trust, and it's a residency funded by the wonderful Arts Council England. The Great North Wood, for those of you who've never heard of it, it's a historic woodland which once covered a big chunk of South London, including the area where I live and where I'm talking from today. Today there are very few precious woodland remnants left of that historic wood, but the ones that are left I love visiting, and I write about them a lot and nature watch in them. Co-leading with me today is Helen Jones. Welcome, Helen. Helen is a disabled nature writer who lives in York. Having experienced periods of being housebound, she has turned her focus to the nature that lives alongside her. She also writes with awareness of her body and how it changes the way she interacts with nature. And you can read her work on her fabulous blog, Unlocking Words. Welcome, Helen.
Hi, thank you.
The plan for today. We are going to, as we have in the previous 5 workshops in this series, we're going to do 3 shortish writing exercises between 5 and 10 minutes long, and then there'll be a 5 to 10 minute break at around 11:50. Then there'll be a final slightly longer writing exercise before a sum up and a little chat about next steps. So we're due to finish at 12:30. So what do we mean by nature writing? Well, it can be creative non-fiction or fiction, prose, poetry about the natural world and often the writer's place in it. It can be anything from tweet length to book length with all the other lengths in between. So in other words, it can be a huge variety of things. There's very few rules, and that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, because I know you'll all be itching to do some writing, we're going to start with a very easy warm-up, which we'll do for about 5 minutes. What we're going to ask you to do is write as many sentences as you can, starting with the phrase "through the window." They could be sentences you've thought up or ones you've read. They could be sentences that make sense or not at all. They could be about nature or not about nature. That's entirely up to you. So, without further ado, you've got about 5 minutes, and I'll give you an indication when we're close to 1 minute from the end of that. Off you go.
Hi, Amanda. Hi. I'm just zooming in to let you know that I'm not able to participate. I'm really sorry. I have a shoulder injury.
I'm sorry to hear that, Carolyn.
And I wasn't able to make contact. I tried to make contact to give apologies, so sorry.
Don't worry, don't worry. It'll be recorded anyway, Carolyn, so you can have a look at it another time. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
So you have about a minute left. Okay, so hopefully that's got some of those writing and thinking muscles working, warmed up a little bit in a nice, easy way. And at this point, I'm going to hand you over to Helen, who's going to talk you through the next bits.
Thanks, Amanda. As everyone was doing that exercise, through my window, a car alarm started to scream. So apologies if you can hear that. So as Amanda has said, I'm a disabled writer, and as a result of that, a lot of my nature is experienced sort of through and from my flat. And we've got a couple of writers quoted here that come from somewhat similar perspectives. And I'm going to read them through, but I wanted to just say that I very strongly relate to kind of Polly Atkins' piece, Windows. I have had periods where I've been unable to leave my bed, and in that time, being able to see tiny bits of birds, being able to hear them, just really made me feel a lot less alone and a lot more connected to the world. So on that, I'm going to read it out for you. Windows by Polly Atkin. Those lightless days when pain keeps you in, under, and the feeder at the window is the only source of movement. You count birds, a flurry of long-tailed tits tumbling at the glass like blossom, the creep of the nuthatch along the wall. There is no zero count with a window survey. Nothing so low, so empty, only feathered need and flight. And she's said in a Magma article, we dwell in our bodies in the world. Everything we experience of the world, we experience in and through and with our bodies. Our relationship with our bodies informs our relationship with the world. For some people, this is easier to forget than for others. And I think, obviously, I'm coming at this from the point of view of being disabled, but I think there's lots of different reasons why somebody's experience of their body in the world can be harder to forget than it is for other people. And that quote for me is a really good reminder that we are all human, and our human experiences, as varied as they are, will affect how we show up in nature writing, both as readers and also as writers. And then we've got 3 quotes from the incredible Josie George. Her book, A Still Life, I would tell everybody to read it. So if you're looking for a book, go read that. She's an incredible writer, an incredible observer. And the first 2 quotes kind of help, I think, the reader to understand how she's coming to her nature writing. And then the third quote is a really good example of like how that actually plays out. So it manifests these days as a quiet intensity. My gaze has intensified as my body has slowed. Now I notice everything, and I am hungry for everything, hungry to experience every detail I can. I make sure I don't overlook a thing. If 8 meters is my limit, I will know it better than anyone else on this earth. I study my surroundings as if they were an encyclopedia. I write about wonders, about extraordinary, overlooked things, to entertain and to nudge people into paying attention to what's around them. And then the third quote from her, the pavement weeds are usually fierce, filling every finest crack between house and street, pushing through the drains and crowding around street signs. But now they are limp and defeated, crisping into sad furls, brown shadows of themselves. I do not worry though. I know they will endure. So for me, they really help me to understand that as somebody who spends a lot of time in my small kind of area, that it kind of really helps me to focus in on the nature that is there. And if we can move on to the next slide, I think we've got a quote that captures that a bit. Yes, here we go. I'm not quite sure how to say her surname, sorry. Miranda Sici, I think, maybe. Sorry. A lot of nature writers seem to believe that you have to go out alone and on foot in order to write about it. And that then means that the writing that is in the genre of nature writing, if that was true, would all be very the same. It would be white, non-disabled men going up a mountain. And actually, as we've just seen, disabled people, disabled women have brought some amazing focuses onto the nature that's around them. So there was a pre-workshop activity, but really don't worry if you haven't done it. I think the value of this workshop is that you can do it, you're in your home, you're in a place, and that's all it needs to be. So if you haven't done it, don't worry. You can use the slides on the inspiration. You may be sat by a window, who knows? So think yourself back into the moment you were doing the workshop, pre-workshop activity, and then write without worrying about spelling, punctuation, or grammar, about everything of the natural world you experienced through that window. And I think it's really important to kind of bring in different senses as well. So don't just focus on what you can see, focus on, what did you hear? What did you sense? How was your body influencing that? I mean, I'm not leading you, but that's what I would go with. So you're going to get about 10 minutes for that. And I'm going to ask Amanda to give a 1 minute warning, because I'm not very good at remembering to do that. So over to you guys, if you can write about what you saw and felt and enjoyed.
So you have about a minute left. And so that's time up. Back to you, Helen.
Okay. Just before we got onto the next slide, there was a lovely comment in the chat from Rebecca that we can observe our world from everywhere, which is very true, and very much kind of what I hope we're able to encapsulate today, and kind of help people to sometimes remember that to do writing, whatever kind of writing that is, you don't need to do anything that to you seems extraordinary. There's like wonderful things going on all around you. So yes, if we move on to the next slide. And this is a really interesting exercise, I think. So again, go back to that moment with the pre-workshop activity or wherever you were just now. And if you didn't do that, imagine that you're looking out of a window through a video camera zoom lens, and then write about zooming in and out of the natural things you saw. And I was thinking about this earlier, and actually you could also do it in terms of tuning in into particular sounds and then kind of zooming back out into the wider soundscape, perhaps. So again, you're going to get about 10 minutes. And if you think about like details versus the wider scene, in terms of whatever senses that, you know, you're pulled towards, or all of them, I think it'd be very interesting. So yeah, again, Amanda will give you a 1-minute warning, and yeah, enjoy.
So you have about a minute left. Okay, so time's up for exercise 3.
Okay. I'll just let people kind of come back. I think it's always quite strange in these workshops. You're kind of getting into your writing, you're really like there, and then suddenly there's someone talking to you. I actually had to kind of think about that exercise while everyone was doing it. I wrote down some kind of notes, like thinking about sound and tuning into particular bits and then out again. And there was a lot of like kind of city noise going on. But then as I kind of tuned in and in and in, there was the sound of a sparrow in the backyard, just kind of cheeping away. So that was a very worthwhile exercise, not even from like a writing point of view, but just of a kind of noticing and appreciating point of view. So I enjoyed that. Okay, if we can move on to the next slide. And we're going to have a little look at thumbnail writing. So just for anyone who's not done one of Amanda's workshops before, this is an ultra short piece of nature writing that's about 40 to 50 words, or if you use Twitter, it's the tweet length, which is 280 characters. And it can be prose poetry, whatever it is that you write. And I find that it's a really helpful way of focusing me in. You haven't got a lot of space. You have to kind of think about what it is you want to convey. And nature is vast. Even if you're thinking just about, the nature that's immediately with your home, there's still a lot going on. So for me, it helps me to focus in, to condense. And because you have to limit the words, you really have to edit it down and really pick out what is the key point here that I want to say. And I think for me, it helps me to challenge how much I use the different senses that in my writing. So I'm quite overly sensitive to sound, so I tend to just block it out. Whereas actually, a good piece of writing brings in different senses. And if you've only got 40 to 50 words, if it's all visual, it's not going to create the idea as well. So we've got a few examples here of thumbnail nature writing, or kind of shorter bits of nature writing at least. So I'm just going to read through them, and they're quite different, I think, but they all sort of convey that idea of writing from where you are. Oh, hold on. Who's the first one by? It's dropped off the bottom of my screen. Sorry, Amanda. I don't want to read it without giving someone credit.
It's the fabulous Lily Kay who's on the call.
It's parakeets sloshing through, pouring down ship masts, slipping behind, sailing between, feathers splayed as they flee, coming into land. Fleet of green echoes doing their own stunts from slingshot cannons. Paint tipped over canvas, flash of vermilion glides, mosaic of green gold shrieks, disappearing in bolt holes, sirens docking. I think another thing with thumbnail writing is that it helps you to avoid cliche because you only have so many words. Got a piece from Gern and Bubba. Lady Summer's cornucopia tumbles exuberant greenery onto the world. Juicy flowers shriek bright colours, jostling ripe lusciousness, coquettish perfumes bursting out of the seams. Punch-drunk bees drone, crickets crick, butterflies flit, young sprout up, grow strong, sheltered by blazing skies. Songbirds sing, sing, sing out their hearts. And I think that really does go to show, you know, with such little words, it really helps you to kind of avoid those cliches and avoid kind of quite normal nature writing descriptions. That one there for me, that crickets crick, is just wonderful. And then we've got a couple of pieces from me and Amanda, and both of them are about birds. Both of them are through windows. Mine was from the passenger seat of a car. So wagtails, they duck, dive, weave, tip and dip and pip to each other, dart through wind, bob, blur, swoop in the sea breeze, flitter like glitter, picked up in a gust, thrown up into a crisp blue sky. And I wrote those notes when I was sat in the passenger seat of the car at Filey Brig, because it was too cold for me to be outside. And every time I think about like those descriptions, I'm back there. And I think for me, that is one of the wonderful things about short little bits of nature writing. A lot of the time for me, it takes me back to wherever it was that I was. And sometimes that might be that I was in my bed horribly ill, but it ties me to a place, and that noticing kind of helps me to be present. And then Amanda's, laid up with a virus, I test out bird watching on the recline. Diagonal binoculars take some getting used to. A sparrowhawk slashes through fresh canopy and flies fast slanted for that appointment it's remembered. 1, 2, 3, shrieking parakeet drama queens shoot up, down, sideways. Just funsies. Mum, don't write funsies, please. I think I wanted to mention like the abundance of birds that have cropped up in this session. And I think that's because it doesn't matter where you are, there will be almost certainly some birds that you see out the window or you hear out the window. And we'll be having a break shortly, but just before we do, one of the other pieces that I was considering including here was from a few years ago. I had been unable to really get out of bed for about 3 months. It was winter, it was miserable, but I had the window open so that I could hear the world and I could get a sense of what the weather was doing, because I lost all track of time. And one night it was about 5 in the morning and I was woken up and I could hear these pigeons cooing to each other. And I kind of, in retrospect, shouldn't have done this, but I dragged myself out of bed unsteadily. And I went and I just watched them. They were just sat on the backyard fence, just preening and talking to each other. And my world had been quite lonely because I was stuck in bed. So just that little moment just really spoke to me and really connected me with the world. And I think sometimes when people are maybe more stuck inside, noticing what's going on outside or even just like inside in terms of nature can really help that. I, for example, right now have a snail hibernating on the inside of my living room window. It's been keeping me company all winter, so hopefully it's doing okay. So yeah, I think that for me is the value of remembering and realizing how much nature is around us, even when it doesn't necessarily feel that way. So I'm gonna I think move on to a break, I think, Amanda, is that?
Yep, so we're going to have a break now. Some of you have already said that your hands are hurting, so it's obviously needed. So we've left that idea of thumbnail nature with you to percolate while you have get yourself a drink and have a relax, stretch your legs. If you would like to share any of the favourite sentences or phrases that you've produced for exercises 1, 2 or 3 on the chat, we'd love to read them. So and we're going to start again at 12 o'clock. So look forward to seeing you all then. See you later. So welcome back, everybody. Before I introduce the final exercise, I just have to say I've so much enjoyed reading through your writing on the chat. And I just wondered whether, Helen, would you like to pick out 2 or 3 to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, there was some incredible things. I always love the variety that you get when you've asked people to do exercises like this. So there was loads of them, so I will just pick out a couple. But from Vanessa, this made me laugh. So, tears of bird shit rain on window panes. Note to self: book the window cleaner. And then in a very different kind of voice, we have Rebecca. The cracks in the bark of the wizened oak tree, like the wrinkles of time on the old farmer's hand who has given his life to tend to crop and livestock, as the tree has given a lifetime of service to the needs of land and animal for the past 200 years. And there was one from E. Wilson. Zoom in, millions of buds on each bare branch. I hate the sight of skeletal trees, and I want to see their nakedness closed. But remember, this starkness hides a rising pressure. The elm trees are crouching on the starting line, waiting for the gun. There's so much variety in how people are explaining things, or like describing things is probably a better way of saying that. And it's fascinating to me how people see the same thing or similar things with different eyes and different experiences. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
Thank you. The final exercise that we're going to work on today brings everything together. So the idea is to create a piece of thumbnail nature on the subject of today's workshop, nature framed. So as Helen has explained, maximum 50 words, and that means if you want a title, that has to be included in 50 words. And obviously feel free to repurpose anything you've worked on so far, this workshop, from the other exercises, or start from scratch, write about something completely different. That's entirely up to you. I would encourage you to, as a starting point, write more than 50 words and then pare it back rather than trying to keep adding words to make it 50. I would suggest that once you've done a first draft, you read it aloud. Something about hearing it in your own voice. Does it sound like you? Is something that's always important to me. You'll also spot whether you've repeated words, which particularly within 50 words is very noticeable, unless you deliberately want to do that, of course, but it's to make sure that you don't do it by accident. So read it aloud, edit and polish it, and then read it aloud again. I don't anticipate that you're going to finish doing all of that in the 20 minutes that we have, but see how far you can get and enjoy. So I shall leave it to you, and I'll give you, as before, I'll give you a minute's warning when we get close to the end of the 20 minutes. So off you go. So you have about a minute to go. Okay, folks, I'll just give you a few moments to pull yourself back into the meeting. Right, so just a little sum up of what we've been doing today and what we've talked to you about. So our tips for compelling nature writing.
I think maybe Amanda got kicked off. Okay, give me a moment. I do have the slides somewhere. They were tips for things like editing, and just give me a moment. Hopefully she'll be back by the time I've finished. Oh, are you back?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry about, I'm not sure what happened there. So root your writing in the moment of experiencing nature and use all your senses. Don't lose sight of the thought that everything that you experience of the natural world, as Polly Atkin wrote, you experience in and through and with your body. Excuse me. I'd really encourage you to spend at least 1/3 of your time writing, but 2/3 of your time editing and polishing your writing. And that's a really good balance to work to. And it's something I have to keep saying to myself because I'm the worst offender for cutting down editing time, and it's never a good idea. In terms of what next, if you'd like your thumbnail nature writing on the subject of nature framed to be considered for an online anthology, then please send your final polished version, as I've said, maximum 50 words, including a title if you want one, to my email address, which is amanda.tuke.writes@gmail.com by midnight tomorrow, Sunday the 27th of February. And I'd really encourage, some of you I know love sending them to me immediately after these sessions, but if you can face hanging on to it and giving it a last read through tomorrow, that's really worthwhile. There's something about having a fresh look at it a second day really helps. So obviously that's up to you, but it's just something to think about. Still got something. So Helen, if you could, because you're sharing your screen now, if you could shift the slides. So thank you very much. But sadly, this is the last of my workshops funded by Arts Council England as part of my nature writing residency. But thanks for joining me, and you've all been brilliant. I've really enjoyed getting to know some of you because you've turned up at all of them, and it's been wonderful to get to know you better. It's been great sharing the idea of thumbnail nature writing with you all, and I hope you've enjoyed it too. But many thanks to all my wonderful co-hosts, Helen, obviously, Vanessa Wright, who co-hosted the Read It World event last month, Rebecca Gibson, Anita Roy, Billy Ballard, Chantel Lindsay, and Jane V. Adams. It was so much more fun hosting these with you. So thanks very much to all of you. It was great. I'm busy planning some very super good value online lecture writing workshops, which will have be slightly different but similar to what we've been doing. And they'll all be, once they're up and running, they'll all be listed on Eventbrite. So if you are interested in doing some more, and they'll also be advertised on my blog, which is the address is there, freelancelecturewriter.com. And just to give you a sneak preview, so what you can see on the right of the slide, I'm working on a very exciting project with the wonderful writer, photographer and designer Rebecca Gibson, who co-hosted the December workshop with me. And we're producing a thumbnail nature journal. The idea is it's a sort of teaching, writing, inspiration resource, which we hope to be able to share with you very soon. So whether or not you join me for a workshop in the future, please do keep nature writing. Hopefully you've enjoyed today and it'll inspire you to carry on. But it's been a pleasure. And once again, thank you very much to Helen. It's been lots of fun doing this with you today. So have a lovely rest of your weekend, everybody, and hope to see you at a future event. Okay.
Thank you, Amanda, for doing this series. It's been really interesting doing them. So
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
thanks, everyone.